All right, everybody. We are 2 weeks out from the presidential election, and I haven't done a formal prediction like this in a while. I have some thoughts that have changed in the recent days. There's been some new polling. I'll probably do this and then one more before election day. But I'm going to go ahead and give it to you straight here. Let me get rid of my face for a second. So we have our map. Previously, I have said that I believe Kamala Harris is going to win this election. However, it is going to be extremely, extremely close. Now, in previous maps, I have had the Democrat in Kamala Harris winning Nevada, winning Michigan, winning Pennsylvania, losing Arizona, losing Wisconsin, and then actually winning either Georgia or North Carolina. I believe in this case, in the last map, I had it like this as my prediction. Now, I have changed my mind slightly with regards to Wisconsin and with regards to Georgia. Now, the key is, and I want to look at the Pennsylvania polling. I know that Trump is leading right now in Pennsylvania. The reason I'm going to go ahead and say Kamala Harris wins Pennsylvania is because in the 2022 midterm, there was a 5 point shift in the direction of the Democrat on that day, that the polls were actually overestimating Trump's support. And I believe that the same exact thing is happening again in Pennsylvania. So even though we have a smattering of polls that are looking very good for Donald Trump, I don't think he's going to actually go on to hold on to Pennsylvania. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think the support there will be just enough for Kamala Harris to go ahead and pull that out. And a lot of that is going to be this continuation of the gender gap, in addition to one other thing we'll look at. But the gender gap is going to be a very significant deal breaker in that state for Donald Trump, as well as the massive amount of support that Kamala Harris still gets there in the Pennsylvania, larger metro regions there in Pennsylvania. So it's not absolutely safe. I'm not absolutely 100% certain, but I would go ahead and bet that Kamala Harris will win in Pennsylvania. On the other end, uh, Donald Trump is making serious gains with African American and Hispanic voters. And previously, I was not sure if that was going to have a significant impact because there's been shifts in other demographics like women and like non-college educated white individuals. However, there have been really the polling coming out of Georgia, and again, I think it maybe is still overestimating Trump a little bit, but we're getting to about 2 points on average, and we haven't had a single poll since almost a month ago at this point that's come out with Kamala Harris in the lead. She's fading there. I think the demographics are starting to settle in. There's a large African American population in Georgia, and if Kamala Harris loses just a little bit of that, that can really spell disaster in a state that really is as close as it is. So I previously felt solidly about that for Kamala Harris. Similar dynamic going to be happening in North Carolina, which is why I am starting to lean towards North Carolina going or staying with Donald Trump again. It's one of the tougher states to win. Joe Biden wasn't able to win it, even though it's gotten closer in recent elections. I just don't see that as being a strong enough motivator, as well as in Arizona, the Hispanic vote and the border, as well as economy being major issues there. Um, Going to be very tough for a state that, again, Joe Biden went and kind of I don't want to say the word stole, but stole back, figuratively speaking, in 2020. Gonna be tough for Kamala Harris to go ahead and do that again. Nevada, I believe, is strong enough. It's not a Democrat stronghold by any stretch of the imagination, but there's enough support there. The polling is 50-50 enough, and that tends to have a Democratic shift on election day. Even in elections where you see other states shifting towards Trump recently in 2016 and 2020, Nevada has actually shifted more Democratic. In 2020, I'm not sure about in 2016. And then there's Wisconsin. So I have been giving Wisconsin to Trump recently, and that's because in the last two elections, the polling has had a massive, massive error. And we've seen the polls or the real election day shift of about 6 to 7 points for Trump. We didn't see the same thing in 2022. The polling was actually pretty accurate, and if we're assuming that there is a Trump lean baked into these polls already, we could, again, none of this is, I don't want to say the word assume, but we can look at this as a likely scenario for Kamala Harris going ahead and hanging on. And reason being that this demographic, as in the non-college white voters, Trump has lost steadily, been losing support in this demographic in 2016 and 2020 and in 2024 in the aggregate of polls. And in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, this demographic makes up a majority of the demographic there. So you're not necessarily dealing with losing the African American or Hispanic vote as much. And you are, if you are Trump, you are taking a major hit in those particular categories falling apart, the gender gap widening, and you could definitely see a scenario where this election comes down to the Democrat and Kamala Harris holding on to just sustaining that blue wall in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Not to mention the Tim Walz effect in Minnesota that could have something to do with picking the vice presidential candidate there. I'm sure they're driving home lots of ads and using him as an appeal there, culturally very, very similar. And he speaks that language better than any candidate we've seen recently. So this will be my map at this point. I believe this is a realistic map. I believe the polling bears this out, and that we could see this on election day. If you're Kamala Harris, you can still afford to lose Nevada. You hold on to Nebraska's #1 district and the blue wall, and you win the election. So I think this is an interesting scenario. You don't have to lose any of those really 50-50 states. I mean, all these states are 50-50 at this point. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin are still 50-50. But of all the states that Kamala Harris would be likely to win, I think those three and Nevada probably the most likely there. We could still see an election day surprise, but don't hang your hat on it. I think that pretty much just about covers it. So I still see, even though we've had a tightening race or we've seen some surging on the part of Donald Trump, he's cleaned up his campaigning a bit in the final days here. Kamala Harris had some missteps, but she's getting it together a bit as well. It's coming down to the stretch. This is going to be an interesting one. So again, Monday, October 21st, that's going to be my election prediction for now. Still a Kamala Harris victory. We will see what happens in the next several weeks.